In the 1970s, technology was completely different, and some of the gadgets from that time seem strange or even absurd to us today. But for those of us who lived through those years, these devices were true innovations and symbols of progress. In this video, we'll take a look back at the most unusual devices of the 70s that are hard to believe people actually used. Let us know, did you have any of these gadgets? Imagine this. In the 70s, people were actually buying a regular rock as a pet. Yes, the pet rock was just a smooth stone sold in a cardboard box with air holes, as if it were a cage for an animal. And the craziest part? It became a massive hit. At that time, many people were looking for quirky, unique gifts, and this pet became a symbol of the strange fads of the era. The idea was so simple, it was hard to believe anyone would pay for it, but the fact remains, Pet Rock sold for $3.95 and became a $1 million business for its creator. In just a few months, over 1.5 million of these rocks were sold. People gave them as gifts, displayed them on shelves, and some even gave their pets names. But when you think about it, a rock required no hassle or care, the perfect pet for the lazy. The fad quickly faded, but it's one of those moments where a simple, odd idea soared to incredible heights. Now, speaking of the 70s, have you heard about waterbeds? They were considered the ultimate luxury back then. Oh, the waterbed craze was something else. It wasn't just a bed, it was marketed as the perfect way to improve sleep and relieve stress. Imagine lying down and feeling the bed gently sway beneath you as if you were floating on water. For many, it was the epitome of luxury. Waterbeds were associated with comfort, relaxation, and even a bit of glamour. If someone had a waterbed at home, it was a sign they were living the high life. But like any trendy gadget, waterbeds came with their challenges. First, setting one up was no small task. You had to fill it with tons of water, and it took up a lot of space. But the biggest issue? Leaks. If the mattress ever sprung a leak, it could ruin the floor and any furniture nearby. And yes, I remember those mood rings. They were said to change colors based on your emotions. It felt like a magic trick back then, but looking back, it was all just heat-sensitive liquid crystals reacting to your body temperature. Still, we all loved wearing them and guessing what each color meant about our feelings. Oh yes, mood rings were a massive hit in the 70s. I remember how everyone seemed to be wearing them, watching with fascination as the ring changed colors. Each color supposedly reflected your mood, blue for calm, green for happiness, black for sadness. But as we know now, it was all about body temperature, not emotions. The mood ring craze spread like wildfire. People really believed they could show what you were feeling. But soon enough it became clear, those rings were just reacting to heat. When your hands were cold, the ring darkened, and in warm settings it glowed green or blue. Despite the eventual realization, mood rings were still a fun accessory, and at the height of their popularity, almost everyone had one. For us kids of the 70s, it was just another quirky gadget of the time. And speaking of iconic gadgets, how could we forget 8-track players? Every music lover had one. They were the must-have device for listening to music on the go or in your car. If you lived in the 70s, you definitely heard about 8-track players. These were the devices people used to listen to music at home or in the car, and at the time, they felt like a true revolution. Imagine popping in a cassette and the music would play endlessly. But here's the catch. Those cassettes had limited playtime, and sometimes the music would awkwardly cut off right in the middle of a song when the track ended. It was a little annoying, but we'd just rewind and keep listening. 8-track players were especially popular in cars. Every music lover wanted one installed to enjoy their favorite tunes on the road. While they were bulkier and less convenient compared to cassette or CD players that came later, back then they were the peak of music technology, a music lover's dream. By the late 70s, as more compact cassettes and tape decks appeared, 8-tracks began to fade. But many people held onto them for as long as they could. After all, what could be better than cruising with your favorite music playing? And yes, remember pocket calculators? They seemed like a miracle at the time. Suddenly, you could do complex calculations right in your hand, and everyone was amazed by the technology. Absolutely. Before pocket calculators, all calculations were done manually or on large desktop devices. So when this small, portable gadget came along, it felt like something out of science fiction. But in the early 70s, those calculators came with a hefty price tag, up to $400. To put that into perspective, it was more than the cost of many televisions at the time, so only a few could afford such a luxury. Despite the high price, calculators quickly gained popularity. By the end of the decade, they became much more affordable, and almost every student or office worker had their own pocket calculator. It's hard to imagine life without them now, but back then, they were a true breakthrough in technology. Oh, Pong. That was a real sensation in the 70s. It became the first video game that people could play at home. And while it seems very simple by today's standards, just two paddles and a ball bouncing back and forth, it was groundbreaking at the time. Imagine sitting in front of your TV, controlling the paddle with a joystick, trying to beat your friend or the computer. Back then, it felt like a technological marvel. For many, Pong was their first introduction to video games. It was so popular that some stores even sold it bundled with TVs. It marked the beginning of the video game industry, which is now a massive part of our lives. Even with its simplicity, Pong paved the way for all the modern games we enjoy today. Without it, who knows how the world of video games might have developed. As for strange gadgets in the 70s, there were plenty. Things like clunky, early digital watches, TV remote controls with actual clicking sounds, and of course, the infamous electric carving knives. What about you? What quirky gadgets do you remember from that time?